So there are a ton of things that you can do in combat in order to try to make your situation better as well as better for your party. And one of those things is the trip action. It has a lot of utility. There's a lot of things you can actually do with it. And it is a really good way if you have a good athletic score in order to make someone prone. So we're going to go ahead and get into that and do a couple examples so you can see what you can actually do with the trip action. My name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into it. So the trip action itself is actually an untrained athletics action that you can do, and it basically allows you to try to knock a creature to the ground. And if you do, you can actually make that creature prone. You can also do damage if you do it well enough. So that being said, being trained is certainly helpful when you do it. And the higher your training level, the easier it will be to do. But let's go ahead and take a look at the trip action itself. So trip is a single action that does have the attack trait, so it is going to be susceptible to your multiple attack penalty. The requirements are you have at least one hand free. However, we're going to go over a weapons trait that might mitigate that a little bit. The description is your target can't be more than one size larger than you. You try to knock a creature to the ground. Attempt an athletics check against the target's reflex DC. Now, on a critical success, the target is going to fall, land prone, and take 1d6 bludgeoning damage just from the fall alone. On a success, the target falls and lands prone. On a failure, you just fail. And on a critical failure, you, as the person who is trying to trip, can lose your balance, fall, and land prone. So there is that if you get a critical fail. Therefore, being trained or having a high athletic score is going to be very helpful. Now, there are two weapons traits that I'd kind of like to talk about that could make trip be a little bit more effective. The first weapons trait I would like to do is if it has the trip trait. With the trip trait, you can use a weapon to trip with the athletic skill, even if you don't have a free hand. So that would mitigate that one free hand thing. It uses the weapon's reach if different from your own and adds the weapon's item bonus to attack rolls as an item bonus to the athletics check. So if you have a +1 striking trip weapon, then you can add that +1 to the athletics check. Now, if you critically fail a check to trip using the weapon, instead of you landing prone, you can just drop the weapon to take the effects of that instead of a critical failure for you. And you would only basically get a failure, which means the trip wouldn't work. The other one that is kind of interesting and works really well for trip is if you have a reach weapon. Now, the reach weapon trait means this weapon can be used to attack enemies up to 10 feet away instead of only adjacent enemies. For creatures with that reach, the weapon increases their reach by 5 feet. So if you already had 10 feet, then you would get 15 feet in that particular case. Now, let's go ahead and move over to Foundry and kind of take a look at a few examples, both as a normal trip with a free hand and a regular weapon, as well as one with both the reach and the trip traits. So let's take a look at the trip action. We're going to look at it in two different situations, one kind of with a normal weapon and another one with a weapon that has both reach and the trip trait. So with the regular action, we'll go ahead and pull up Crag. And as you can see, Crag is using his +1 striking Dwarven War Axe in a single-handed grip. Because he has one hand free, he can go ahead and attempt to trip. So he would target a creature, and then he would be able to attempt a trip. If he rolls a trip action, he will roll against the athletics of this particular hobgoblin soldier. And it is a success. Because it is a success, the target is going to fall and land prone. Because it landed prone, it is now going to also have the off guard condition. If it would have been a critical success, it would also take up to 1d6 bludgeoning damage. But now let's go ahead and take a look at that in a different situation with reach and a trip weapon. So now let's look at a situation in which a creature might not be adjacent to you, but you have a weapon with reach, as well as a weapon that has the trip trait. So let's bring up Crag again. And Crag, you can see, has a +1 striking Guisarme. Now, the +1 striking Guisarme has reach, which means that you can attack creatures up to the listed distance away instead of only adjacent creatures. And with this trait, they're long and they can be used to attack creatures up to 10 feet away instead of only adjacent creatures. Also has the trip trait, which kind of gives you a few things. So you can use this weapon to trip with the athletics skill, even if you don't have the free hand. It uses the weapon's reach, if it's different from your own, which this one is, as well as it adds the weapon's item bonus to attack rolls as an item bonus to the athletics check. So because this is a +1 striking Guisarme, you will get a +1 on your athletics check for the trip. So with that being said, let's go ahead and target the Hobgoblin Archer, and let's try a trip. The trip will do the athletics check. And this happened to be a critical success. Now, on a critical success for a trip, the target lands, falls prone, and takes 1d6 bludgeoning damage. So we can go ahead and do the 1d6 bludgeoning damage, and it would take 1 point of damage, as well as now being prone. Prone means it is also off guard as well. But you can see that you got the +4 from strength, the +9 from being an expert in athletics, and then you can see there's a +1 for weapons that they got because the weapon has the trip trait. Now, I hope you enjoyed this playthrough of the trip. I actually did get a request for this one using both the reach and the trip weapon traits. So thought it'd be helpful to kind of go ahead and put it out in Foundry and show you what it can actually do. If you did happen to like this playthrough, please feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But whatever you do, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.